Welcome to the West Coast WVU podcast brought to you by the 224 Podcast Network. My name is James Brooks. I'm your host. Thank you guys for joining this week's episode. I took a week off last week. I was on vacation with my family up in Northern California. Had a nice little time there. So didn't get an episode out, but wanted to jump back on this week just to kind of talk about all the random stuff that's been happening. Not a ton going on, like we've mentioned. This is the doldrums of college sports. There's just, you're you're waiting for football to start. You're obviously baseball ended somewhat recently for the select few teams in the College Baseball World Series. Basketball has been done since March or April technically, and so not a ton going on, but we do have some exciting news from a football standpoint if you're into uniforms and things like that. Otherwise, not a ton going on. I did want to shout out everybody that has been interacting with me on TikTok. I started up a TikTok account not too long ago, about I think the beginning of June-ish, like June 10th or so, and I've just been kind of like trying to pump out some videos and stuff and wanted to shout out all of you who if you're here from my TikTok, welcome. It's great to have you here. And if you're listening and you haven't checked out my TikTok, and if you if you have one, that is, go check it out at West Coast WVU. Um, just fun to interact with West Virginians, West Virginia University fans, and all that stuff, and just opening up a new avenue for uh, putting the podcast out there and putting getting new people in the community and all that stuff. So, welcome to those who may have found their way here from there, and if not, then go check it out. It's been a fun little area to talk West Virginia sports and all that kind of stuff. So, anyways, that being said, the main news, the big thing that came out this week was yesterday. West Virginia announced that they are bringing back the glossy football helmets. And for some of you, maybe you don't care about uniforms, you don't care about what the team wears, you just care about how they perform on the field. And I get that. Some of you, they could wear whatever, and as long as they're winning, that's all you care about. For me, it's like especially like growing up playing sports, I've always been into like the equipment and that kind of stuff, and into the idea that like if you look good, you feel good, you play good. And I think the players care about that kind of stuff. And obviously, they're the ones wearing it and everything. And as a fan, as someone that identifies with the team, you identify with the look of the team, the branding, all that kind of stuff. Like, I mean, branding matters for a reason. If West Virginia rolled out pink and yellow uniforms or something, you'd be like, what's going on here? Like, what's that? They're not following that old gold and blue brand and all that kind of stuff. So I do think there's an objective importance to it. Now, whether or not personally you care that much about it, that's fine. It is what it is. Myself, and I think a lot of people on Twitter and just in the fan community do care, and it's fun to talk about. So there is a huge kind of movement on Twitter about bringing back the glossy helmets. I don't know if it was started by the account it's WV Uniforms on X or on Twitter. I think they started the movement, more or less. I mean, people have been talking about it for quite some time, at least for I feel like since I've been involved in kind of the the fan community and all that stuff on Twitter. But it's been talked about for a while, moving away from the matte helmets, the matte navy, which came out in, I think it was 2013. So it's been 12 years of matte navy helmets, which I think when they came out, matte was pretty cool. It was pretty unique. I remember like when I was in high school in the early 2010s, we had like glossy helmets, and the schools that, like, at least at the high school level, the schools that had the matte helmets were like the new cool thing. And same, I think, with the college level and stuff. I remember when those came out, I was like, oh, I wish we had matte helmets. So when this switch happened, you understand it. Like the matte was new and cool and exciting. Baseball teams were doing it, football teams were doing it, college level. I'm trying to think if it was really done much at the NFL level. I feel like at the NFL level, a lot of the helmets stayed the glossy type paint, but can't think of any off the top of my head. But I'd be surprised if no teams did it. I think the Browns. I mean, the Browns kind of did it. That's one that comes to my mind. Um, I'm sure if your team wore matte helmets in the NFL, comment on Spotify or wherever you're watching on YouTube. Anyways, all that being said is when it came out, the matte helmets were pretty cool. But ever since, I mean, lately, I don't know, 12 years of it is a lot. And it's one of those things where I always go back and forth, right? I talk about liking traditional uniforms. I talk about never, if you just have a look, if you have a traditional look, there's no need to change it. Like you think about Alabama. Um, I think Ohio State's in there, LSU, USC, Notre Dame, like those types of like traditional looks. You don't really need to change it because it's just that's your identity, that's your brand. And I'm sure there are fans out there of those teams that feel tired of kind of the same old, and they get excited about getting new and exciting uniforms and all that kind of stuff. Not throwbacks, but like alternate uniforms and all that stuff. In West Virginia for the longest time had like I mean they had like an identity in the 70s where they had the white helmets. We kind of went over this in my last episode, and if you didn't see, you can go back. I kind of go through my top five favorite West Virginia uniforms. But you had the 70s uniforms would have the white helmets, state outline logo, uh, navy jersey, white pants, that kind of vibe. Then in the 80s, they switched. They bring out the Flying WV, which is again an iconic logo, hasn't been changed and shouldn't be changed. Um, they switch over to the old. They go switch back to like the yellow or old gold and blue look, where they have just like a traditional collegiate type font for the numbers, navy jersey, yellow pants, white jersey for away, yellow pants. And then they switch in the early 2000s to a specific template, which was very 2000s. I don't know, a very 2000s look. I look back on it and I remember, I think my like high school football team had a similar template uniform as WVU around that same time. Like, well, I was like that was like 2009, 2010 time frame, but kind of a similar like just like a I don't know. It's hard to explain other than like a 2000s template. You can go back and look at my previous episode to see what it looked like if you don't know. But um, and you look back on it, and it's not the traditional look, but it's people look back fondly because they associate with Pat White, Geno Smith, Tavon Austin, all those guys. And then you go to I'm just going through the history now. You go into the early 2010. You go to when they in 2013 when they switched to the matte helmet. They switched to the like pickaxe numerical font, the weird like capped like the sleeves would be like navy with like a black cap here, or navy with like a yellow cap, or yellow with a navy cap. Like I don't know. Not I wasn't a huge fan of that. And then you go to the Neil Brown era, or what I call the Neil Brown era, the late 2010s, early 2020s, where a little more traditional look from a jersey standpoint, but you still have the matte helmets and all that stuff. So, anyways, all that to be said, yesterday West Virginia announced that they're moving back to the glossy helmets, glossy paint helmet with like a gold flakes in the and they are beautiful. I mean, to think that we had matte helmets for as long as we did, to think that we moved to matte helmets in the first place. I mean, again, like I mentioned, at the time the matte helmets were trendy. It was kind of a thing. I don't necessarily fault West Virginia or any school for that matter for doing it at the time, but for to hold on to it as long as they did. Now that you look and see what those glossy helmets look like it now, with like the modern helmet shells and face masks and stuff, like it is a beautiful helmet. Um, I wonder if I can actually find it and uh, show it on here. Yeah, beautiful looking helmets there, just so shiny. They're gonna look so good under the lights and night games. Um, I swear it makes the logo pop even more, even as well. I mean, the matte logo I feel like didn't pop as much. You can see on this one in the middle here, the gold flakes on the helmet also bring out that shine as well. Just a really beautiful looking helmet. I think it goes back. I think the Flying WV logo makes any West Virginia helmet one of the best helmets in college football. But I do think like the matte finish of the shell itself kind of brought it down. I think bringing back this glossy finish to the helmet to the shell makes makes the this helmet one of the best helmets in college football. Now, everyone obviously like you have your team and you might think that your team has the best, but the navy, the shine, the gold flake, the flying WV, I mean, it's really hard to beat this helmet in college football in my opinion. So, that I mean that it it's been a long time coming. There's been a lot of people wanting this helmet to come back, the shiny glossy finish, and it's nice to have it back. I think the big thing that I wanted to kind of speak to about this, now obviously yes, it's fun the glossy finish and all that stuff, having it from an aesthetic standpoint is super fun and I really appreciate that. But I think the key thing here that as a West Virginia fan we need to highlight is I don't know at the end of the day whose decision it is. I'm sure it's a mix between Wren Baker as the athletic director, Rich Rod as the head coach, um, maybe the equipment manager to some degree. But shout out to Wren Baker and whoever else is in charge of making this decision for listening to the fans. I think this is another example of the football program, the athletic department having their finger on the pulse of what the fans want, um, specifically through these like Twitter movements where fan, you have hashtag bring back the gloss. Um, you had last season with the coal rush. Now, personally, maybe I wasn't maybe a huge fan of the coal rush uniforms. I think they were cool. It was cool to, I will say, the whole vibe of honoring the people who have worked in the coal industry and coal miners and all that kind of stuff. That is cool. Personally, do I need to see West Virginia wearing all black uniforms? Not really. I do think the way they did it was cool. How they had the stripe on the helmet have like it was like a little more white towards the front to look like a coal miner's helmet. You had like the reflecting striping to look like the reflector, like a reflector, like the reflectors they have on their uniform or on their, I guess, uniforms for the coal mining stuff. So like the way that they kind of brought in the coal mining aspect into those uniforms was cool. Personally, I don't care to have like a black uniform, but I mean the black as a fan, the black polos and the gear and stuff like that was cool. So I get it. I'm somewhere in the middle on those ones. But point is, shout out to Wren Baker and shout out to the football program and the athletic department for having a pulse on what the fans want. I mean, this was a meme type tweet that was from like 2013, 2014, maybe even earlier. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was like the imagine this like Milan Puskar, lights are off, the coal miner, come out with like coal miner lights, blah blah blah, that whole thing. Talking about like a basically what ended up being the coal rush uniforms and all that stuff. So um they brought that out, which was really cool. Um the gloss. I'm trying to think like what else they did, like black for the basketball team. They did black uniforms for basketball. They brought back the Jerry West style uniforms last season for basketball in honor of Jerry West, which I know a lot of fans have been talking about things like that. So I just feel like what Wren Baker and the athletic department really have a nice pulse on, like that they're on Twitter, they're on social media, seeing what the fans are talking about, seeing what the fans are wanting. And again, not all fans, but like the majority, I think, of fans are wanting these types of things, and the athletic department is going out and doing that. And there's a lot of fans that will be that are contrarians and say, "Yeah, who cares? Let's just win football games." And I get it. Winning football games, winning basketball games, winning is what matters the most, for sure. But as a fan, like for myself, like I get excited about cool new uniforms, like bringing out. I mean, that's a whole nother thing I totally brushed over. The new uniform set that they brought back last season, um, with the flying WV on the shoulder stripes, the pant striping. They really brought back a lot of the classic looks that, it might not be like that traditional classic look that I talk about from the 80s that I liked, or the 80s and 90s, but they brought a lot of aspects of that back into modern uniforms. Plus now the glossy helmets, like it is, they'll they'll be looking good. Whether or not they win games, that is the next important question that we will be diving into as we get closer and closer to the season. But just again, I think it's less about glossy helmets. Yes, I'm pumped about them personally. It's less about glossy helmets and it's more about Wren Baker, Rich Rodriguez, the football program, the athletic department, and listening to the fans and like giving the fans what they want, which again, at the end of the day, fans want wins. So that that remains to be seen. Do I think we'll get all the wins we want in this first season of Rich Rod? Probably not. We've talked about this, right? Like I think somewhere between a 6 to 7 win season would be a winning season for Rich Rod, right? Like you get to a bowl game. You just thought you with all the transfers that we've had and all that stuff, like it's hard to have super high expectations, hard to expect more, 8 or more wins. Somewhere between 5 to 7 is probably realistic. Hopefully, obviously, we're closer to 7. Uh, we'll we can dive a little more into it as we get closer to the season. The win situation remains to be seen. Hopefully that we do get what we want as fans and we get wins. But for the time being, the fans also want glossy helmets. They want new uniforms. They want alternate uniforms. They want black uniforms. All these types of things. And even I mean, this was less of a fan movement, but the throwback, the 1965 throwback uniforms with the blue state outline and all that stuff. I don't know. That was less of a fan movement. I think if I recall, Wren Baker had just in an interview talked about how he thought that uniform with the blue state outline was like super unique and stuff, and that he would like to see that come back, and he made it happen. And now like the 1965 I forget what they're calling it. 1965 merch, basically. Like it had their like baby blue polos with that logo, quarter zips, all that kind of stuff. Like that merch is sick. It's pricey, but it's sick, and that's a fun thing as a fan as well. Like it keeps us engaged, keeps us wanting to, at least for me, like wanting more and stuff. So, just exciting stuff. It's fun to like have an athletic director that cares about what the fans want. Because the thing is, like, you keep the fans engaged, and it's going to help drive revenue and that kind of stuff. And we're in the money making business. You have to make money to compete in NCAA football in order to keep fans engaged, to donate and all that kind of stuff, to pay NIL stuff, to get recruits in and things like that. You have to make money more so than ever in today's landscape. So all that being said is shout out to the athletic department and all that stuff for listening to the fans. It feels good to be heard and to see things be put in motion. And like a random tweet out there that says bring back the gloss or whatever it is, Coal Rush, like those random tweets that gain traction aren't just in an echo chamber. It's not just a void in Twitter. Like you're being heard and seen by the athletic department, and shout out to Wren Baker for making that kind of stuff happen. So, not the most exciting, maybe, for some of you, maybe not the most exciting topic to listen to talk about in West Virginia sports. But it's something and exciting. I think for future episodes, I'm really trying to figure out what we want to talk about. I would really love to get some guests on the podcast, specifically guests that are from West Virginia, went to WVU, share your experience, share what makes you a fan, that kind of stuff. I think I'm gonna try and put together a Google form out and just put it out on social media. If you're interested, you can fill it out, and um, if you're interested, you can fill it out, and I'll take a look at it and contact you, and we can get get people on the podcast as a guest. And you don't have to have your own podcast. You don't have to be a podcaster or anything like that. Like if you just want to come on and chat with me for I don't know, 20 to 30 minutes about or maybe longer, 20 to 30 minutes though, about your West Virginia fandom and all that kind of stuff. I'd love to highlight people that are, you know, what makes this fandom great. I think that'd be a great way to kind of kick off, kind of take talk, fill up the off season, but also kind of kick off the getting into football season where people really get excited about college sports and all that kind of stuff. So, um, that's all I really have for today. Thank you guys so much for listening, and go Mountaineers.